Well, yes, as you mentioned, that was actually the first job I had, the real job after uni at CERN. I was always curious about science and physics, and CERN, being in Europe, like one of the biggest like research centers, it's like everybody knows it. And it's funny, I just applied to some position there, and I had I think 5 or 10 minutes phone call with the manager, and they basically just hired me.
That's so much quicker than most Martech job applications, round after
Yes.
round. Wow, that's pretty cool.
It's to be fair, like they have a program that is targeted for either students or people who just finished uni, and that was the kind of my luck that I was just in the right moment at the right time.
You were a clean slate. They could make anything out of you. You could have been
Yes.
the next Brian Cox for all they knew. So, hey, István, thanks for joining Couch Confidentials. We are officially in episode 5 of season 2. It's a pleasure to have you here. And like I mentioned in the intro, CERN. So before we actually dive into analytics, I am so curious to hear about your career path. It differs a lot from mine. I feel it differs from a lot of people. But the one thing that jumped out to me was you actually started your career at CERN, and I love science. So please tell me all the fun stuff about that. How'd you get started at CERN?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation and that I can be here. Well, yes, as you mentioned, that was actually the first job I had, the real job after uni at CERN. I was always curious about science and physics, and CERN, being in Europe, like one of the biggest like research centers, it's like everybody knows it.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I just applied to some position there, and I had I think 5 or 10 minutes phone call with the manager, and they basically just hired me.
That's so much quicker than most Martech job applications, round after round. Wow, that's pretty cool.
It's to be fair, like they have a program that is targeted for either students or people who just finished uni, and that was the kind of my luck that I was just in the right moment at the right time, for the right person, the right job application. I just applied. And as I was just finishing uni, they just took me without any, they knew that I don't have experience, and they saw me. Okay, I studied computer science. I have some degree in something, and they basically just said yes to me.
Oh, but you were a clean slate. They could make anything out of you. You could have been the next Brian Cox for all they knew. But you got to see So, I mean, for those of you listening and watching, sorry, but I just have to ask this because I've never actually spoken to someone who's worked at CERN. Did you see the Large Hadron Collider?
Oh, yeah. I worked on it, on the infrastructure for that. Yes,
okay, well, I think we'll have to do a different episode on that one because that's pretty cool. I've heard a lot of stories about it, and I don't know if they do day trips there, but it's definitely on my list to see sometimes. It's truly fascinating. But I think after CERN, you really started getting your feet wet in marketing technology. I read about Skyscanner, Sharper 3D. Yes. Is this kind of what molded you to where you are now?
Yes. By the way, like coming back to CERN, my role at CERN was already related to data.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was not marketing data, obviously, but it was already data.
trying to fill those tours, I guess.
Yeah. I just like to tell this because it's like very interesting. We did like data analytics as well, monitoring mostly, data monitoring. So there is like already started to work on some kind of charts and displaying charts and things like that for the LHC. And so when I finished there, it was. Oh my God, it was 10 years ago. And I joined the Skyscanner in the Budapest office. So they have multiple offices before COVID. And I joined the office in Budapest. Yeah. And originally I was like a regular software engineer. I shifted back to back-end development, things like that. But after a year, I basically became the single data person for that team I was working.
Okay.
And so what we did is not marketing analytics it's a travel company. So it's a marketing analytics job I had, but it was mostly product analytics, we called it.
Yeah.
But as
that's complex for travel. I think a lot of people underestimate the complexity of a travel product.
Yeah.
How did you experience that? Because I've worked for Thomas Cook and for TUI, and just doing the analytics and trying to make sense of, matching user behavior. But it's so difficult because every journey almost every visitor that comes has a unique journey. Yes. Literally, not one on the website, but also the journey, the travel that they want to do. And it's so hard to really compare apples with apples. How did you experience that?
Oh yeah, it's a long story. Like when I started to work on the data, what you have to imagine, there was essentially no data platform at Skyscanner yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like still using like Mixpanel only, and data analyst as a role didn't really exist. And
okay,
for me,
10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, the first couple of months were basically building a data platform. Not alone, obviously, but they had like a data platform team as well. But in our office, it was mostly me. And then later, one of my colleagues joined as well. And I don't think it's a trade secret or something, but we embraced Databricks at the company.
Yeah.
Just because the scale was so high at that company. Like Skyscanner is one of the biggest online travel search engines. It's not a travel agency or something like that. It's a search engine. So their scale is massive, like billions of visitors, unique visits yearly or monthly even. And so we had to handle that. So I was mostly focusing on the engineering part back then. But as we are so few, my role was kind of a mix of doing engineering and the analytics part as well.
Always, you become a generalist at those times. Everyone's doing everything.
Yeah. And that was very lucky because, I had to understand. So I started as a software engineer for a backend application. Yeah. So I was related to the product, my job was very related to the product. Then I did the platform work. And eventually, once the platform was like in a good shape, I started to do a data analysis type of work.
Yeah.
So how I can describe this was like, I had like some end-to-end knowledge about the products, how the infrastructure works, and how data is being consumed by, stakeholders.
Yeah.
And that was a very lucky position for me.
It's my whole career. The foundation, I think, for where you are now.
Yeah, definitely. So what we do now, the first ideas, came to fruit there at Skyscanner. So the first really, like, I would put it like pre-MVP version of the product we are building now was actually working already at Skyscanner as an internal tool.
When after you guys switched to Databricks, of course.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it's because to kind of make the switch there, I know there was another job in there, but I think Skyscanner is the best segue to Mitzu, the company that you are building at the moment. I mean, you guys haven't been around long, but you guys are pushing a product that feels very timely. There's a lot of talk, especially in the bubble that I'm in around customer data platforms, marketing automation. Composable is a very hot topic. Data ownership. But I think that kind of falls in line with what you're doing with Mitzu, because it is about data ownership, and you are building, I don't know, probably some people are using that term, composable analytics.
Yes. Yeah, we use that term as well.
Okay. Damn, I can't coin that now, but yeah. But how did your vision from Skyscanner actually evolve into what Mitzu is today?
It's a personal story. I'm a big people pleaser. Let's put it this way. I was doing this type of data analytics works, and I really cared about how people consume the information I'm processing in, let's say, in Databricks at Skyscanner.
Yeah.
And what happened eventually already at Skyscanner is that I've seen more and more people coming to me for questions, and my number one goal was answering them as fast as possible. I had like my internal KPI, answering questions regarding like customers and user journeys.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed by this. And actually, that's where I started to work on this application, Mitzu, but as an internal tool, like a very tiny thingy. And basically, when I left Skyscanner, it was due to COVID, by the way. They shut down the offices. There was like the travel industry was hit very hard by COVID. So our office was closed. Unfortunately, we were let go, unfortunately. But on the positive side, I could join another company, Shaper 3D, which is a startup based in Budapest. They were at the time also B2. In contrary to the travel industry, their business was booming. because they were building a mobile application for like iPads or like a 3D CAD application for iPads. And as people are locked in at home, everybody was starting to kind of use their application and learn CAD modeling. And essentially that started booming, and they experienced the same problem, that they are gathering more and more data, and essentially it becomes kind of unmaintainable in third-party analytics solutions. So I was hired to build a data platform, Databricks again, and basically redo the same job I did at Skyscraper.
Are you copy and pasting here?
Yes. Exactly. Okay. So I built the same thing, same platform, same way. It worked just fine as well. And eventually I became
it's a verification of what you were doing was actually something that companies needed.
Yes, exactly. And eventually I became as well like kind of a data analyst / data engineer, understanding end-to-end the whole thing. And I started to do the same thing, kind of this people-pleasing approach. I give out as fast as possible the answers to questions. And I decided to make a little open source project that can do kind of like self-service analytics, customer analytics, I call it, or marketing analytics or product analytics. We call it customer analytics on top of Databricks. So basically this little project, it was still an internal tool, not the same as what we had in Skyscraper, but like still an internal tool that was automatically generating SQL queries on top of Databricks. And basically it was for the technical people, it was kind of a notebook application, Jupyter notebook application. Doesn't matter. I could give it to people at the company and they could start using it. And I started to measure usage in this application, and it caught on. People really started to use it on a daily basis. And they started to answer themselves the questions they had from the data that I, put together with the team at the company.
And this is natural language processing, in terms of the questions that they were able to ask to the data.
No. Back then it was. I think
that was still a bit too early for that.
I think there was the time when it was DALL-E, the big hit. So the DALL-E 2, I think. So the first OpenAI, first OpenAI product. So we were like. I mean, this current LLM world is, it's very far from that.
Yeah, people were using DALL-E to generate graphs and saying, "Hey, I did analysis. Look, here's the graph I generated." So you were able to enable these people to get more in touch with the data that was essentially stored and available for them to use. What were at this point, you're slowly you're building out that open source project, but how do you start processing that feedback? And how have you processed that feedback now into what has now essentially become a Mitzu, I guess? I think that's the progress that you made from that open source project into the company that you have today, right?
Yes, exactly. So I think it wasn't that hard actually, because as I was working with my colleagues, we could just sit down together and discuss, user feedback to that project. So I had like quite so many hours every week dedicated to that, and basically showing it to people, onboarding them. It was an easy task because we were in the same office. It was like maybe 150 people or 100 people that I had to, to talk to, and it was possible. It was not like a massive scale. But the positive thing that people once started to use it, they stick to it and kept on using it. So retention was very high on the application. Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
So eventually I left the company as well after 2 years, and I restarted the thing third time as an open source project.
Copying and pasting again, István.
Yes. Exactly.
I need to figure out this business model as well, man.
But
here's something I prepared earlier. It's like one of these cooking programs where you just come in, we'll bake this pie, but I've already baked one. That's probably how the process went. But just to kind of come back to the comment I made earlier around composable analytics, what was your, how should I say, what pulled you towards this type of solution? I mean, I have a digital analytics background, working with the likes of Omniture, Web Trends, Google Analytics, you name it. I've probably had an account in one of those platforms at some point in my career. But I've never really had or have been in touch with a composable analytics platform. I understand the benefits, and one of the biggest benefits I could imagine, and it's also something that you guys mentioned on your website, is that you draw your conclusions from the same data. So if somebody creates an KPI or some kind of metric, it is centralized. And when it's centralized, that means that everyone who who's benefited by this data is looking at a result from the same calculation. And I cannot count on two hands anymore, probably not even if we had a full football team here, on everyone's hands, the amount of times I've gone into meetings and we spend more time on arguing, hey, what is your KPI for what I think is the same metric or the same calculation different from mine, because everyone's doing their own thing. So my two questions to you: why composable, and why the drive for that centralized approach?
So why composable? For me, it's very easy to explain this because it was our pain that I felt across my whole career. So how I see this is that any serious business at one point in their life, they start to move towards a data warehouse based data collection approach, and everything will be centralized into a data warehouse. And I'm a big believer in this as well. I always advocate this to any company that is that I talk to. It doesn't make sense to all companies. I believe that
True. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to all companies, definitely. But most companies that hit a certain maturity, or they are in certain industries, it really makes sense to handle your data in your data warehouse.
Yeah.
And the traditional, CDPs or traditional digital analytics solutions, they work still with these companies, but to your point, that at one point they become completely diverged from the data that you see in your centralized data warehouse. That's one thing. I think in terms of customer analytics, the difference in the data can be still acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So you maybe see 5% difference in some conversion rates or something like that.
In some cases, it's more about trends than accuracy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That can be or there can be major flows in either one of the data sets, either in the third party tool or in your data warehouse. There can be major flows, maybe your data is missing or something like that. In the data warehouse, it's significantly easier to fix any of these issues because you have control over it. And so I'm a big believer in having full control over data, understanding how things work, how things are calculated, how users are kind of, the profiles of users are mapped, where the data to these user profiles come in, where they're coming from, how do we calculate them, things like that. So this transparency, I'm a big believer in that. In contrary to third-party solutions, the black boxness of those tools,
we won't name any names.
It's fine to have. Yeah, no, I don't say anything bad. I'm a big believer in that. That company should own the data and own the knowledge how things are calculated.
Yeah, and, if you look 80% of the world uses, I think, or 70% of the businesses use Google Analytics.
Yes,
that's the black box. You cannot add any data after 72 hours, not retroactively populated with data older than 72 hours. So it really does put a blockage on your capabilities as an analyst to really understand what's going on.
So back to composability.
Yes.
If companies or teams believe the same thing, so what our tool is a perfect fit for them, because you can just take it and plug and play to your data models, and you can right away, within a minute, you could access insights in a self-service way, not through chat, not yet at least, but it's a consumable UX.
Yeah, and I have to admit that once you start working with analytics, chat might not be the most professional way forward, because you really need to think about how you want to structure your KPI. Just one small mistake or a change in your algorithm, or at least the calculation that you want to make, you'll get a completely different figure. So that really needs to be verified, and it needs to be watertight. So I agree with you in that sense that relying on something like AI to work out the SQL code needed to, or at least extract that data from your data warehouse, might bring too many risks in its current form.
Yes. Yeah. This is something that we always have to. I don't say convince people that we talk to, but somehow make sure that they understand the risks of using Vibe. Let's call it Vibe Analytics.
Vibe Analytics. That's actually a company, I believe. I think there is a company called Vibe Analytics, and they offer this product for analytics. I think it's funny. They nailed that one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fantastic. The marketing pitch is amazing, that you type in a question and immediately a report pops out.
Yeah.
Texts and charts and everything. It's amazing. The first experience with these tools is amazing. The aha moment is like, it's mind blowing. The devil is in the details, let's say, when you dive into real, questions that are like very, fine grained and, you know to know the specifics. That's where the problem, comes out from the.
Yeah. Oh, and like you said, if you have bad data in there, it's not that AI is going to help you solve those bad data issues, but it is something that you can expose. And as you correctly pointed out, within a data warehouse, you have it's easier to fix, to cleanse, to perform proper data hygiene on that data that's already in there. So that's quite interesting. But now I'd like to move on to the centralized point, because I think that is of significant value. I've always been a big fan of a company called AVO, AVO, and they're from Iceland. And what I really like about them is that their vision around data quality is to push that responsibility all the way upstream to the point where you're collecting that data. And they're actually developing the tools that you build a kind of an implementation plan. The implementation plan is accessible for developers when they want to implement certain tracking codes within the source code. And then at the moment that the data is pushed to various endpoints, they run actual checks to make sure that it adheres to conventions laid out into that implementation plan. And I think that's wonderful, because that is one step to getting better data quality. It centralizes the entire process for a team, because it's similar to GitHub or Git. You need to do a pull request, make changes. You can push it back in, and there's an approval process. And what I always like to push for is that this becomes like a cross-departmental process. You need people from tech, you need people from data, you need people from data management, maybe in some cases legal for the consent aspects of it. And that's what I really like about Mitzu's proposition, that you are centralizing that track or the KPIs as well. So what was, I think I already laid out why you want to do it, but what was the aha moment for you to say, hey, this is what we need to focus on? Reusable KPIs across the company.
I think I kind of already mentioned that back at Skyscanner or even Shaper3D, we used some of these third-party analytics tools, and the problems you mentioned that arise as well, that some folks see some charts that are completely different than what you would see in like a BI tool or something like that. And it can be very, counterproductive or problematic in scenarios when somebody, let's say, sends a link into like a common Slack channel from let's say a third-party analytics tool. People open it and they see some downwards trend in the charts on the KPI, and they panic, and everybody starts to investigate what is the problem, and it turns out to be just a data quality issue. And this we have experienced many times in my career, that because of the data quality issues arising from third-party tools, people wasted so much time just on investigation that we essentially needed, for me, it was kind of an aha moment that we need to handle this somehow, that people just, don't chase these kind of ghosts coming from these tools. That was kind of one aha moment. I usually don't like to think about these like composable solutions as like cheap solutions, but that the other factor was that, especially at Skyscanner, the costs associated with double storing the data. We stored everything in Databricks, and we also stored everything in the third-party tools. That storage cost was enormous.
Oh, because was it that at the time that Skyscanner was using Databricks and Mixpanel?
Yes.
In parallel? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Both in parallel. And, just double storing everything, it was, maybe in the millions. I can't say numbers, but,
No. Huge.
Yes, it was huge cost for them because of just the volume of events that they were collecting. The millions of or billions of users that visited the platform.
But doesn't that come into play as well when using a data warehouse? You need to query that data. Storage is not necessarily the most expensive factor with data warehouses at the moment, but it's querying the data. Is that something you take into account when doing pricing propositions then, or?
For us, yes. Luckily, the fact is that we can leverage existing infrastructure.
Okay.
Makes it easier sell. So many of these companies that we work with has already, computation costs already allocated, and We just leverage that already. So it's that the already existing infrastructure.
You just sit on top of it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's very often it's like there is no extra cost coming from conditions that we run.
Yeah, and so looking at at pricing, I don't think I've really been actively involved with pricing for some of these alternatives. I don't want to say older solutions because some of them are still really doing really well, but they have a completely different pricing model. Now I know with composable, when I look at CDPs, for instance, one of them they focus on the pricing through the connections that you have with a database. So the number of connections, and that's what they price by. How does Mitzu differ? Because one of the things I did see, it was kind of a claim. I've got it here somewhere, that you have been able to cut costs for to use composable analytic solutions by 90%. You rightly pointed out composable is not cheap, but that goes to show how more expensive some of these other solutions can really be. So why did you take a different approach?
First of all, it's a value proposition for us that, for certain companies, because of the volume they have, and nothing else can work. By the way, that's kind of our ICP. That one of our ICPs is that there's such a huge volume of data that nothing else would work. Not just because of the cost aspect, but because of I would even put if you have your data already in the data warehouse and you would like to move it out to a third-party tool to have it to have self-service analytics capabilities for that data, the time to move the data away on a daily basis would take maybe hours because it's just the sheer volume what they have in the data warehouse. The other thing is that we didn't want to get into discussions with companies that how we measure events and users and what is a user. We just wanted to make it simple. If you sign with some company, it should be a clear and simple calculation. What are they going to pay for? We try to make it value-based, to be honest. Currently, the best approximation is seat-based pricing.
Yeah.
But to be fair, like most of the customers we have currently is a custom plan.
Yeah,
we provide for them.
Because from what I hear, I think huge amounts of volume is kind of a theme that pops back up. I think your current target market is, let's say, enterprise-sized companies. So if we're talking about migration, that's not really that's one of the topics that came up in my mind. It's not really a big issue as long as an existing data warehouse is present for you to plug Mitzu on top of.
Yeah. Typically, integration happens within minutes. So the first chart appears in Mitzu from the company data warehouse within minutes. So that's.
I've tested these claims before with other companies, so I'm getting this sudden itch. I was like, all right, maybe we need to do a live demo sometime and really see how long it takes.
The first chart is within minutes.
The first chart. Yeah.
The full integration can take.
Okay.
Just so checking. It's, when you do a first integration, it's typically with the data person, like a data engineer, that comes to the meeting and you set things up together and he will see she will see the first chart within minutes. That's true. We don't lie there. To fully onboard an enterprise scale company, that takes months. So it's, use case by use case.
Yeah, and multiple data warehouses, most likely, even more, multiplications of tables that are there. So I can imagine that the complexity is definitely present. How do you guide companies in that process, though? I mean, it feels like I'm almost you're pushing and doing a sales pitch for you guys, but this is real curiosity, because I can imagine that with the companies that you work for, it's not always as clear cut. If you look at a regular startup these days, they're all digital.
Yep.
They might have a data warehouse, they might not. If they haven't, you'll set one up from scratch and you've got full control. But I can imagine that in a lot of the situations where you interact with your customers, they're saying, hey, yeah, but we've got 30, 40-year-old systems full of data. Can we make use of that? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's a good question. Very good. It's, to be fair, it's still a learning process for us. It differs from company to company. It's a spectrum. If a company is familiar with tools like this, customer analytics, so digital analytics tools, the tool itself is very easy to explain. That's a good part.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good scenario, because then they need to just understand like the underlying data, or not even that often. It's like sometimes it can be very, very fast to onboard a customer. The biggest problem is where we need to explain digital analytics to customers. They have like the person who decided to go with us has been educated from some place that they need to have some tool to make it, efficient, the company efficient, and self-service decision making should be a thing. And they expect from us to kind of, implement the culture as well.
Oh,
and
wow.
that's the hard part. Yes. And, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking as well, because that is a topic I've been hearing a lot lately. And I'm seeing a lot of posts now. And it's I don't know if this is, again, because of the bubble I'm in on LinkedIn, but people saying, hey, technology, don't focus on that too much. Focus on your culture and educating, lifting up those skills of your people. Chiang Kai-Feng wrote a good book about this, about humanizing data strategy, where he says, build that community within your company to share the knowledge. Get in HR involved more with the hiring process, so that the people that you do get into your company are in somewhat data literate. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to hear that, even interesting. All right, I'm not that naive. Enterprise companies that you have to come in and educate people outside of the person who have contacted you.
Yeah,
sounds very familiar. Is it? Oh wow, yeah. It's how do you? Is that something you feel that you are responsible for? I've asked this questions to CDP vendors before to say, hey, how do you make sure your clients keep on making good use of your product? Not just at the purchase and the implementation and the initial kickoff, but 2-3 years down the road, because this is something, if it's not attended to or energy is put in, it's going to fall apart. Is that a responsibility you feel that is bestowed on you? Or, I mean, at this point, I can imagine it is, but yeah. Are you shocked by it? Too many questions on this topic. Wow.
No, this is a good one. Yeah, I like this topic. To be honest, like being a founder, it's a responsibility for you until you kind of burn out in it.
I can. Yeah. You want it. Yeah. You need that sale. I mean,
yes, definitely. You need to retain the customers. Like, luckily we didn't have, basically we are like near zero churn still. So it's which is amazing. And we are being lucky on company. It's like the company itself is 2 years old. Actually, last month was 2 years old. And so I still know every customer, like account, what they do, how they use the data, and we have quite many already. So it's a good thing, but I still know the use cases, everybody's use cases. And many of the users I know personally as well. Yeah. I know what they are trying to achieve, and I can relate to their problems, which is advantage of being a startup, an early stage startup. Yeah. But we are growing out of it. We are getting to the point where it has to be a process to handle these problems. I definitely prioritize currently at the current moment, like prioritize pre-sales type of onboarding and customer success. Let's put it this way. Yeah. And I delegate more work to the colleagues I have to, retention type of problems, customer success in the already onboarded or the onboarded customers. It's a learning process, in short. It's a learning process.
Yeah,
and prioritization.
I feel like absolutely. And I feel that, I mean, maybe it's a difficult question to answer. Whose responsibility is it to keep a end user motivated, or company motivated to keep using your product? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there is a balance somewhere, but I think the whole maturity and the skills needed partially on the end customer, because they're the ones who are going to benefit from being able to use this product correctly. And if you don't have the people who have the skills, let alone working with the UI, but just being able to analyze this data or put the KPIs together, that's saying more about maybe the people you hired than the product that they're using. Unfortunately, reality says, hey, if people feel that the product is failing, it's usually the product's fault, right? Because it's easy to point a finger at a vendor.
Oh, definitely. or the data quality is wrong. That's slightly better for us, but it's never marketing. It's the marketing campaigns are perfect. Yeah. But by the way, to the question of like, if we discuss, we have calls with customers or like leads, I can already have a lead scoring mechanism in my head that what the type of questions they ask, I can calculate in my head the likelihood of conversion and email retention later on, because of the fact that if they ask the correct questions, they use the correct words, the correct terms. Yeah. they are likely to understand the product and the problems coming from customer analytics.
Okay.
And the good customers, or
that's a KPI all by itself.
Yeah, definitely. The customers we really like are the ones that there's at least one person who is like an expert in this topic. And that's okay. Our champion, and we can I focus on that person, or like we are focusing on that person and like trying to make him happy about the product and share the product internally, instead of us trying to convince everybody, every user, which is like it's boiling the ocean. Exactly. So that works. This champion strategy works. Mostly, if there is a champion.
But you did mention earlier that you have started tracking actual usage of the app. I guess that I assume that's with your customers to see what the kind of the adoption rate and the engagement rate is with your product within the customer's domain. Are you seeing that expanding? I think, do you look at that at the number of seats that a customer is expanding to, or the complexity of the work that they're trying to achieve with this?
Yeah, definitely. We see expansion most customers, but it depends from the company and how they started to use us and where are they now. Typically, what happens is they start to use, one person starts to use it, the person who integrates. They test a lot of things, and then it's kind of expands in the company. And more people are signing up to the application and start to use it. It's a natural, it's natural. Like any digital analytics solution would be like this, I think. We want to achieve like internal virality with the application. Even better, we want to achieve, I'm not sure if there is a correct term for this in like marketing, that people who leave the company and they go to join another company, they take the knowledge and the understanding of this composable analytics with them.
They leave that behind, and
and this is luckily already happening. This is luckily already happening, that we see people taking us to the next place they are joining.
Cross-pollination. They're like little busy bees at work. They go from that flower to that flower to that flower, and they spread the word. I mean, those people are golden. I've come across those. When I do projects with customers, I always try to identify at least one person. Usually with CDP projects, there are multiple people involved. But as soon as I find one that is just, I guess in a sense, asking the right questions, maybe using the right terminology, those are the people you want to cling on to, because
definitely
they're going to promote the solution. They're going to drive the adoption of the solution within the company. It's highly underestimated. I suggest holding an event for these people with Mitzu and getting them all together. Can you imagine? Hey, but I mean, you guys have been going on for 2 years already, 2023. Where do you guys see yourself in 2027, 2 years ahead? Let's say you're at halfway. What are you guys looking at?
Product-wise or business-wise or?
Growth to the moon, of course, but in terms of in terms of product,
But we have to learn still a lot. Definitely about this whole industry. It's a very, I would put this, it's a niche product. I would like to be completely transparent from the business point of view. It's a niche product, like hard to get started with. Your first chart is within minutes, but the full onboarding can take a year even. To some companies, or like at least a half a year. I wish I can reduce this time significantly. This like expansion in internal virality, expanding internally time to like a normal amount of time. That's definitely one KPI I would like to optimize. Whether if it's like, a product feature, we introduce AI, chat capabilities, doesn't really matter. For me, it's like the kind of goal would be to reduce the time when finally the value is seen by many people in the company. That's one thing. And definitely, the lead generation part, obviously, that's for us, like as a business, is definitely, we have to work on that. The composable world, composable analytics, composable data stack world is catching on. I think it's more and more, relevant with the AI and everything coming into place, but we cannot expect that it will be mainstream suddenly, or it may be mainstream in some industries already, but we have to go and actively, a bit more to reach more and more of companies. And so that's definitely we have to improve. Product wise, I think there is always space to improve. Definitely, like we definitely would like to have some capabilities, not like mindlessly putting into the application that we just have to have AI because everybody has AI. But we have we have identified a couple of places where it would really help. especially for users who are not familiar with these digital analytics products.
Yeah.
For them, I think it would be a much better experience to get onboarded to products like this. If their first interaction is like a chat type of interaction, but the result of they receive back is like an insight. We call it an insight that is that you can create in the application. But learning to create the insight with mouse and clicking around is takes some time. So that could be reduced definitely by like AI features. That's what we see. The integration could be made self-service. It's somewhat self-service now, but we almost never see people having it correctly set up in the first time in a self-service way. So for that, we definitely would need to also introduce more more let's say AI capabilities. So integrating with your own data warehouse from the tool.
Yeah. Well, it sounds interesting. I mean, with the integrations, and there was one point that I can't recall real quickly, but it popped up a question in my mind around, and this also comes back to your initial claim around owning your data. Is Mitzu something that can run on premise or within private cloud, so to speak? So, I mean, if you look at that point, if you look at certain sectors or verticals, so to speak, around banking, or even from a geopolitical standpoint, there is, personally what I've seen, there is a slow rise in that demand. Yep. And especially it revolves around that ownership, saying, hey, we don't want anything in the cloud, or at least not a generic cloud. We want everything to be, I think in that case, because as much as I love composable CDPs, we do have to acknowledge that at some point you are pushing that data back out into cloud world, so to say. You're pushing it back to the Metas, to the Facebooks, or Google Ads, etc. But with analytics, the whole composable story becomes completely more understandable, because you do not have to extract. Well, you're not doing copying of data, but you don't need to approach the cloud, the web, to get access to your data. You can do it. Wow, I see huge opportunities in terms of analytics. That's
definitely, like we mentioned, the high volume and cost being one of the drivers for this. But to be fair, 50% of the leads we have is mostly for privacy. The privacy aspect of it. Yeah. And
that says a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe not 50, maybe I'm a bit exaggerating, maybe like 40. And there is another segment we like that has, we call it complex data.
Yeah.
That is typically, you have your events and your users and everything collected from the SDKs and things like that from the applications.
Yeah.
But many companies, they have very complex data sets that don't only revolve around users.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Education tech.
Mm-hmm.
There is like classrooms. There is all sort of like teachers. That's a type of a user, but it's a different user that you would consider. Like, it's not a student.
The non-common data models. Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. And those things are as well, like these companies as well kind of are interested in this approach, because that thing is quite easy to model in the data warehouse, these complex models. But in a traditional third-party tool, it's almost impossible. And back to the privacy.
If the main tools can't even work with family analytics, your family composition, let alone classrooms, maybe hospitals, clinics, those kind of, But we moved on.
Yes. And back to the privacy aspect, it's, regionally, like Europe is very, more sensitive for data privacy. And European companies that we talk to they consider on-prem, or self-hosting it, at least in some data. So it can be under the VPN. Everything can be accessed only through the VPN. And this is something that comes up. And I think that's why it's kind of a niche. It's not a mainstream problem typically, but there is some industries, fintech, education tech,
countries where the data is not even allowed to leave the country. I mean, look at Saudi Arabia, for instance. That's a great example of the restrictions there. Yeah.
Yes. And you have your open source data warehouses, let's say Trino, or like ClickHouse, or like even Postgre. We can leverage Postgres data as well. And you can host yourself, and we can connect to that, and everything can be self-hosted. It's something still we have to investigate how how viable is this business. It's very hard on support. It's very heavy on support, but we have already some examples for this.
And guys, come on, you've been in business for 2 years. I think you guys are doing great. And
thanks.
There's still so much yet to discover, and there's so much for companies to discover with you. So I hope that exposure comes to you guys, because it definitely sounds like this is a clear-cut win for companies trying to leverage huge data sets and are very conscious of privacy. But hey, super thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I think we started with CERN and we ended up with data privacy. You've had this really interesting career path, but it's I like where you're headed now in terms of Mitzu, and it's always great to see these unique, or as you say, niche tools where there's definitely a clear purpose for it in the market. So thanks a lot for your time today.
Thank you so much as well. It's my pleasure.
All right. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.